I'm Marlon Martinez, a Belize-based research assistant on the project Kriol Poetics and subject formation in 20th century Belize. During visits to the Belize archives and the National Heritage Library, I rediscovered the tactile rhythms of pencil note taking, uncovered newspaper poems, and even traced a link to a distant relative. These analog methods sparked unexpected insights, deepening my connection to the archival landscape. I stepped into the archives excited. With my multicolored pens in hand, I had visions of pages filled with underlines and annotations. Each color would mark some new discovery or the other. I was ready for deep research to chase discoveries and capture them in ink. The plan was simple enough: read, reflect, record. I had no idea how much that plan would change. In my eagerness to begin, I missed the no pen sign, but the archives officer didn't. With a kind smile, she quietly took my pens, and she returned with four pencils and a sharpener, placing them in front of me like an offering. And I felt awkward at first, but that shifted into a quiet gratitude. I didn't expect it, but I've come to prefer pencils for this kind of note taking. Their erasability feels like permission to think more slowly. Before I ever thought about pencils and notepads, I had high tech plans for this project: access databases, Dublin core metadata, OCR software. I imagined extracting newspaper poems from the archives, converting them to searchable text, tagging and sorting everything, and building a digital database. That was the vision before analog note taking's tactile experience reshaped it. Yet, with all this in mind, the system began with a pencil, gray graphite, and yellowed pages that my eyes scanned slowly and deliberately. My white gloved fingers turned fragile sheets, sticking to each other, and I cringed each time an aged page tore slightly, like a surgeon, anxious to not further injure a patient, my pencil in a gloved hand, recording my findings on paper. And yet, in this very low tech activity, I find something that no algorithm helped me to find: a story about a jaguar and a hunter. The hunter was my distant cousin who killed a jaguar in 1958, selling the skin afterward. Back then, it was legal, but now it would be a crime. What an amazing contrast, and not just in legal versus illegal, but rather how values had shifted so sharply, with the jaguar transforming over the years from a trophy to be hunted to becoming a protected, revered animal. And me, with all my grand plans of digital archivist work, beginning this process with a lowly graphite tool, the pencil. This is far more than just data collection for me now. It's memory, culture, personal. I discover more than just poems. I discover more than just text. I discover the sounds, the visions, the textures of the past, of a past that I am more connected to than I ever realized. And the pencil has now become more than a facilitator of nostalgia for me. It connects me to archives, ancestors, past traditions, and present laws. History in gray graphite, not just what I found, but how I found it.
Hello, everyone. My name is Isabel Trejo, and this is Crank It Back, microfiche based media. So, shifting to microfiche exposes us to a vast spectrum of works relevant to our project. But as everyone in the pursuit of knowledge will come to know, many untold challenges lay ahead. Now, Belize Archives and Records Service boasts only one microfiche machine, and it is a hefty, boxy thing that I considered at least a few centuries old at first sight. And later I was told I wasn't too far off. The machine itself, according to staff at archives, is a particularly old model, with two knobs for forward and backward, and a variety of other buttons and dials all geared towards producing the best possible viewing experience that such a machine can offer. Most importantly, this particular model requires more grunt work than newer, sleeker versions. That means a tricky, intricate process of getting the film set up for viewing, then later cranking the roll of film by hand to get it back in working order for the next person to use it. Now, with no more than 3 members of staff on the floor at all times, I quickly learned how to handle the film myself, though the process remained inconvenient and left my hands cramped by the end. Thankfully, once I had established myself as someone who would keep coming around, the staff took pity on me and taught me their industry secret of using a pencil to roll the film back with much less effort. My poor, straining muscles were grateful. Now, given that there remains only one machine through which to view the microfiche film, one of the early problems that I anticipated in my work was delays due to someone else's need of the machine. However, in my many months scouring the film for poetry, not a single person but I seemed to have use of the machine. And very quickly, I began to realize why that was. Now, many rolls of film have actually been scanned and uploaded to the archives database as PDFs, and these are accessible by the desktop computers in the research room. Reading and saving these files allows for much more ease than the microfiche machine, which is a bit of a creature and must be treated as such. Now, the machine is connected to its own desktop, which uses the scanning software Capture Perfect to take shots of film to be saved as files. And while the scanning process is simple, the conditions leading up to it are not. Our machine has a great many dials, including those that adjust zoom, sharpness, and rotation, all of which must be cosmically aligned in order to capture a clear, legible scan. Sometimes, despite one's best efforts, slightly blurry and passably legible if you squint is the best outcome. Now, the struggles I faced are all relevant for anyone who wishes to view the vast library of film and archives, but make no mistake, I'm not complaining. While microfiche film has been lauded as outdated and old school, there are clear benefits to this mode of media. Film is notoriously sturdy and resilient against wear and tear, meaning that the rolls themselves are in remarkable shape and can be viewed in exactly the same quality as when they were first captured in 1979. One also need not worry about a potential digital library facing backup issues or becoming unavailable with internet loss. So long as the physical library is present and available for viewing, of course, so is the information. My experience at the archives fostered in me not only an appreciation for microfiche film, but also the organization on whole. I was treated kindly throughout my experience, and I also came to be viewed as something of a regular. I was grateful for this when it meant being waved in without issue and an anticipation of my presence and of my needs, but I was also saddened by what it meant. My visits were confined to twice a week maximum, yet that was still considered noteworthy enough to recognize, not to mention my complete and total monopoly over the microfiche machine, both of which point to the fact that archives simply isn't receiving the foot traffic that it deserves, especially considering the wealth of information that can be found there. Now, I'm given to understand that microfiche film is considered an outdated mode of media, and that most people prefer to stick to information that can be found solely on PDF. While I admit that using the machine can be a bit of a challenge, I also believe that this is a tried and true method. These rolls of film have kept information safe and accessible since their first documentation in 1979, still available for us all to use, and over 40 years over the fact at that. I believe that this is a mode of media that should be protected and utilized for its sheer longevity and durability. This is an entire form of record keeping, and it should be brought into the technological age, not done away with for the sake of new and shiny. That said, I'm sure the staff at Archives would agree that a newer model of machine would be nice someday.
I'm Elizabeth Bailey, a junior at Bryn Mawr College majoring in linguistics and classics. This is the first time I've worked on a research project or archival documents before. Coming into the project, I had a sense of research as a very lab-based or library-based project, and working remotely with a transnational team gave me a lot of new perspectives on what it can be. I definitely gained more appreciation for the kind of work that goes into producing the digital archives that I rely on for my own classes for easily accessible primary sources. Work such as converting file types or designing a display format for them seem like small steps, but they really add up to create a usable final product. Of course, there were a few surprises that came along the way. It was really fun to come across the Art Nouveau style in a newspaper ad from the 30s, as I didn't think the style was used anymore by then. I knew that working with optical character recognition would come with a learning curve, but it proved to be even more of a challenge as it didn't read the documents as well as intended. This is one challenge of using scans of documents and the differing quality of the scans. While finding a solution to this problem, I got the opportunity to work with image files of recorded Kriol speakers as part of a collaboration between the National Archives and Dr. Fuller's project on digital preservation of Kriol recordings. I didn't anticipate how meaningful it would be to be able to see the people whose voices have survived on the recordings. It made me think more about who they were and how few people's words out of everyone's who ever lived are still around. It's a really unique thing to have these recordings and to have permission to work with them.
Hi, my name is Jamie Garcia, and this summer I worked with Dr. DeShield and Dr. Fuller Medina on their research project. As a Dominican immigrant, I was very interested in learning more about Caribbean history, and I felt that my role in the project was valuable because we contributed to the portrayal of Caribbean history and culture in academia. So some of the tasks that I worked on were testing optical character recognition software. Unfortunately, we couldn't find any that was able to accurately depict the words and phrases in the scanned images of the poems, so we decided to manually retype a lot of them instead. Some things that I noticed is that a lot of these poems included significant historical events in Belize, such as the drive for Princess Margaret from the United Kingdom. I think that these poems demonstrate, the impact that colonial power had on the use of language and literature in Belize. I also got to learn a little bit of Creole throughout my time on the project, and it was difficult at first to manually retype poems since I didn't know much Creole, but after learning a little bit of the grammar and phonetics, it actually became a lot easier because I could recognize certain words in many poems and it was easier to type. Overall, I gained an appreciation for the culture of Belize and the linguistic history.
At the Belize Record Service, much of the archival work still relies heavily on older technologies such as microfiche scanners and magnetic film rolls. These tools were once used to set the standard for preserving historical records and newspapers, but now they only present significant challenges. Firstly, there is a lack of physical copies of many newspaper issues, as well as many of the magnetic rolls storing these records have degraded over time, leading to partial or even permanent loss of several of these datas. And this highlights a need for us to move towards more modern preservation methods. Moreover, another critical issue is that only one functioning microfiche scanner is available on site. This severely limits the amount of capacity for retrieval, reproduction, as well as digitization of documents, creating delays and inefficiency in archival work. Moreover, the institution digital base remains minimal, with limited storage and accessibilities. As a result, researchers and the public face difficulties in obtaining archival materials, and the risk of information loss continues to grow.
The following are some samples of some of the newspapers that were scanned using the microfiche machine at the Belize Archives. While some of them may not have the best scans, there are some that did scan properly and are legible enough for reading and OCR scanning for digitization.
Digitization plays a very vital role in preservation. Firstly, it is essential for safeguarding cultural heritage, ensuring that films, photographs, and other fragile documents are protected against physical deterioration and loss. Secondly, it supports the advancement of newer technology, allowing for valuable content to remain compatible with modern systems as analog formats are becoming more and more obsolete. Digitization also encourages global sharing and collaboration and enables archives to be accessed and studied across institutions and nations, and creates a cultural dialogue and research partnership. Its educational value is also equally significant as digitized materials can be repurposed for teaching, in exhibitions as well as in creative projects. Lastly, digitization upholds a historical responsibility, preserving a record of human experience and ensuring that accountability and accuracy in documenting our past.